Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of the lab orientation. My name is Sarah Youssef and I'm the psychology research coordinator as well as instructor at the psychology department at AUS. Now, as I mentioned, this is part 2 of the lab orientation. Now keep in mind that all of the students are expected to complete both part 1 as well as part 2 in order to be able to proceed forward with research experience. So please do not watch this video unless you have completed part 1 of the lab orientation. I will be deducting points at the end of this week or next week if I noticed anyone watching this video and completing the lab orientation test, so essentially finishing part 2 without completing part 1. So this is going to be a short video. I will just be explaining the rules and guidelines that you guys need to be aware of so that you can get started with research experience. But as I mentioned, everyone taking Psych 101 and Psych 102 will need to complete both parts of the lab orientation fully in order to be able to proceed forward with research experience. Now, in part 1 of the lab orientation, I already discussed with you guys the difference between research participation and research alternative. So when you're done watching this video, you will be taken to a short lab orientation quiz where you guys can indicate your preference for whichever option you'd like to go for. So whether it's research participation, where you will be completing studies, both online as well as lab-based, which will be posted on SONA, and then upon completion and paying adequate attention, you will be gaining the credits for completing the studies. And we have option number 2, which is research alternative, where you guys will be completing research-related activities, which will be administered by me outside of class hours, and then you will gain your points by attending these mandatory activities. A lot of the information which will be presented in this video will most likely apply to those doing option number 1, which is research participation. But you should still watch the video and listen carefully to all of the rules, even if you're doing research alternative, and that's because a lot of the rules will still apply to you. In terms of completing studies, as I mentioned, we're going to have a combination of online as well as lab-based studies. All of these will be posted on SONA, which is the platform that we use to post studies. So even those doing research alternative will have their sessions posted on SONA itself. The difference is that for those doing research participation, you can essentially sign up for anything that is posted as long as it does not have the word research alternative session 1, research alternative session 2, 3, 4 in its title. So anything with research alternative session 1, 2, 3, 4 should be completed only by those doing research alternative, and everything else can be completed by those doing research participation. Online studies will be posted on SONA, so you will be able to tell from the description that it's an online study, and if it's an online study, you don't need to come to the lab to complete it. All you have to do is just click on the link on SONA. It will direct you automatically to a third platform like Qualtrics, just like this one, which will allow you to take the study, and then you will be granted the credits later on. If it's a lab-based study, you need to come to the lab to take it. The location for our lab is in the HSB building itself. It's right next to the Psych 101 and Psych 102 classroom. So it's next to HSB 1018. It's HSB 1013, which is the big psychology lab space. Inside HSB 1013, you will find all of these different locations. We have 2 computer labs, which are HSB 1014 and 1015. We have multi-purpose rooms, which are HSB 1016A and B. And we have an eye tracking lab, which is HSB 1017. The point is, if you have a lab-based study, just come to HSB 1013, which is at the HSB building at the corner after the Psych 101 or the Psych 102 classroom. So the exact location for every study will be specified on SONA. Again, if it's an online study, it will just be mentioned on the system. If it's a lab-based study, it will also be mentioned on the system. Now, instead of mentioning all of these different room locations, which can be confusing to students, what we're going to do is we're going to mention HSB 1013. So if it's HSB 1013, it means that you need to come to the lab, and then we can direct you. So me or the research assistants can direct you to the specific location of the study. If your study is going to take place on campus, so if it's a lab-based study, you need to make sure to bring an ID card with a clear picture of you on it. This can be your Emirates ID, driver's license, any form of ID should work as long as it has a recent picture of you on it and it includes your name. You also are expected to arrive on time, so if you have booked a study that starts at 11, you need to actually show up 5 to 10 minutes before the session starts, because it means that the door itself will be locked at 11. And once the door is locked, you won't be admitted in. Once the students are in completing a study, it's going to be very disruptive to allow students in late. So please be attentive and just be punctual when it comes to attending a study. No food or beverages are allowed. This is true across all of the labs on campus. So if you're eating or drinking anything, please just make sure to leave it behind before you enter the lab. You need to be attentive and follow rules. So one thing you will notice is that if you are scheduled to take a 30-minute study, you come to the lab, you finish it in 20 minutes or less, so you won't be dismissed early. You will only be dismissed once everyone else is done. We do this because we really need you guys to focus on the study. Keep in mind that this information that you're providing in a study goes into publications, which will get shared with researchers around the world. So honesty is really important, and this is why we are enforcing all of these rules. It's not to make your lives miserable, it's just because this data is really important to us. And you're getting credits in return as well, so it's a win-win situation. We will have a lot of research assistants who will be helping us organize all of the studies to come, so please treat all of them with respect. If you're seen mistreating any of them, you will be barred from research participation and will receive a 0 for this component of the course. Now, before you participate in any of the studies that will be posted on the system, whether online or lab-based, you will be provided with a consent form outlining the main purpose of the study, the benefits involved, as well as the risks involved. If upon reading the consent form you felt like this is probably not a study you would be comfortable participating in, it's okay. You can just raise your hand, inform the research assistant, and you can exit the lab without losing any points. You can't do this for every single study that you want to complete, otherwise you won't be able to fulfill the required 5 credits, as you won't find enough studies to participate in. So if you think that you're going to face issues participating in studies, or if you think that the topics are going to be very sensitive, then maybe you should think about going for a research alternative. But we've never really faced any issues with students complaining about the topics being very sensitive or something difficult to complete. So I would recommend that you guys go with research participation just because it's less demanding. But if you think that you wouldn't be comfortable participating in studies for some reason, then maybe research alternative would be a better option for you. Now, if you do agree to participate in a study, so you do provide consent to participate, then you need to give your study your undivided attention. You need to finish it all in one sitting, and this mainly applies to online studies. So I don't want you spending 10 minutes on a 30-minute study, taking a break, and then coming back and finishing the rest of it. Just make sure to finish it all in one sitting. And you should not rush through it. Just give it the amount of time that is requested of you, and pay sufficient attention so you won't lose points later on. In case of questions or concerns, you can just contact me, or you can contact the principal investigator of the study, which is the main person conducting the research. You can find the information about the PI of every study on the consent form, which again will be provided at the beginning of every study. Now for penalties. If you sign up for a study and you did not complete it on time, or you just forgot about it and you forgot to cancel your session on time, you will lose 40% of the total amount of credits assigned for that study. Likewise, if you enter the wrong SONA code, so as I mentioned, SONA code is the 5-digit anonymous ID code that is given to everyone with a SONA account, so you can find it under My Profile on your SONA homepage. You will be requested to provide your SONA code almost for every online study and for some lab-based studies as well. Now, this point mainly applies to those doing research participation, but also for those doing research alternative. At the end of the semester, you will be asked to complete an end of semester survey where you will be asked to provide your SONA code. You will also be asked to provide your SONA code in the lab orientation test, which will follow after this. So make sure that you know your SONA code. It's the 5-digit anonymous ID code that you can find under my profile on your SONA homepage. Again, if you enter the wrong SONA code or you enter your AUS ID instead of your SONA code, you will lose 40% of the total amount of credits assigned for a study. If you show inattention when completing a study, or if you complete the same study more than once, the same penalty will apply. So you will lose 40% of the total amount of credits assigned for a study. Now, with that being said, SONA can sometimes send you email reminders, just like this one, urging you to complete a study whenever a deadline for a study is approaching. If this is a study that you have completed in the past, please ignore these emails and do not complete the study again for the second time. Otherwise, you will lose points. So it's really important to note that this happens because when we administer online studies, they're administered using a third platform such as Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey, which are not really linked to SONA. So there is no way for SONA to know whether you have completed a study or not. So for that reason, it would be better for you guys to keep a written record of the online studies that you have signed up for and the ones that you have completed to avoid confusion. So again, the penalty is 40%, and this will be displayed as an unexcused no-show notification on your SONA homepage. Now, you can make up for the points lost just by participating in more studies, but that's just an extra unnecessary step that you can easily avoid. Now, finally, when it comes to assigning SONA credits, keep in mind that you will not be receiving your credits the minute you finish a study, and that's because sometimes for certain studies, the PI will need to look at each individual submission for around 200 to 300 students before the credits can be granted on the system. But this is, however, not true for some studies. So for certain online studies, you will be receiving your credits the minute you finish a study. For example, once you're done with this study, once you're done with the lab orientation test, which will be again administered right after this video, you will be redirected back to SONA and you will see that you will have the 1 credit reflected in your SONA account. So regardless whether you receive the credits automatically or not, please wait for at least 7 days from after the last time slot that has been scheduled for a study to see your credits reflected in your account. So if a study or if a deadline for a study mentioned on SONA is on the 10th of July, wait for 7 days to see the credits reflected in your account. If at that time point you still did not receive your credits, then you're welcome to stop by my office or to email me and I will look into it for you. That's pretty much it for this video. So I covered most of the information that you need to know before you start participating in studies, which is if you're going with the research participation option. But this information will also be useful to those deciding to go with the research alternative option. Again, keep in mind that you will have to choose your preference in the lab orientation test, which will be administered in a bit. Now, for those doing research participation, once you receive your 1 credit, it means that you're done with the full lab orientation process, so you're ready to start participating in studies. But just keep in mind that the first study will not be posted right away, so you will need to wait for a bit, but just keep checking SONA once or twice every week to make sure that you are always up to date with any new studies posted. If you're doing research alternative, you should wait for an email from me first so that I can direct you on the next steps that you need to take in order to start with the research alternative sessions. So best of luck. Again, if you have any questions, you're free to come see me whenever you want, or just send me an email and we can schedule a meeting for sure. Best of luck on the lab orientation test, and I will see you very soon.